So the message I'm going to give this morning, to give credit where credit is due, is adapted from one originally written by the Reverend Amy Zucker Morgenstern. A few minutes ago, Angel shared with us two versions of a world map. One showed boundaries, and the other did not. One had a variety of colors, and the other did not. Which one is real? When I was a child, I used to think that those lines on the maps represented real lines, real borders, or actual walls on the ground. You may have thought similar things. But I know better now. I know that there are no natural lines on the ground between countries or states, and that there are very few natural boundaries that physically divide us from one another. But there are boundaries that we have created, both physical and in our minds, and the maps show some of those. You might notice, though, that while the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee's Guest at Your Table program features people from around the world, the posters and the pictures in the stories don't show maps. They show us faces instead. Why is that? Why do faces represent humanity more than any other part of our bodies? A philosopher named Emmanuel Levinas once said, quote, "The face presents itself and demands justice." End quote. He believed that the face represents the other, that the face represents our humanity, one to another. We begin life by seeing another's face and recognizing ourselves in that face. Babies are fascinated by other people's faces, sometimes even before they can focus their eyes. It is as if we know from birth that our connections to other people shape us, make us, and are us. More basic than the question, "Who am I?" is the question, "What is the relationship between me and this other, this face I behold?" I knew I'd do that. These are the faces that you see in your booklet that was in your chair. So what is the relationship between these faces, the faces of our guests, and mine, or yours, or ours? Looking into another's face, I can see many facets of the human condition: joy, age, youth, interest, anxiety, longing, or curiosity. Let's all take a few moments now to contemplate these faces. You or someone next to you has a booklet or a bookmark in your chair with the same faces as what's on these posters. You'll pull those out now. Let's look at these people steadily, with open eyes and hearts right now. What are these people feeling? What are their experiences? What are they longing for? Let's take a few moments for silent contemplation. To look into another space is to recognize the essential absurdity of those lines on the maps. What does it mean that some of these spaces dwell within some of those lines, and other faces dwell within other lines? What significance can it have in comparison to all that is within these eyes and these smiles? Astronaut Michael Collins, who flew to the moon on Apollo 11, said this about his view of our world. Quote, "I really believe that if the political leaders of the world could see their planet from a distance of 100,000 miles, their outlook could be fundamentally changed. That all-important border would be invisible, that noisy argument silenced. The tiny globe would continue to turn, serenely ignoring its subdivisions, presenting a unified face that would cry out for unified understanding, for homogeneous treatment. The earth must become as it appears, blue and white, not capitalist or communist, blue and white, not rich or poor, blue and white, not envious or envied." End quote. Blue and white, that is our planet, where we all live together. What if we were visited by aliens from another planet or galaxy? If they came here, what would they see? No lines between this spot of land and that one a few miles away. Just a blue-green sphere, gently misted with clouds of water vapor, or more as the case may be today, spinning in the light of a yellowish sun. And when they met the people, they would surely regard us all as all one people, one species of earthlings, Terrans, all of us together. They would probably be astonished to learn about the imaginary lines. They might be confused when they learn that the people within these lines are suffering from a famine, while the people within those other lines over there have so much food that they're throwing it away. They might ask, why don't you just redistribute the food to where it's needed? We try to explain, well, we have all these different nations, you see, different economies, different religions, and, we're fighting with those people over there, but that all makes some kind of sense if you believe that the lines on the map are real. It doesn't make so much sense if you look at the lines in the faces in this room, the faces in your booklets, or the faces you see around the world. When Levinas counsels us to begin with the face, he is asserting something very simple that we know to be true. We are all connected, inextricably and inseparably. Anything that tells us otherwise is an illusion. There is a word for the illusion that we are not connected. It's called alienation. Karl Marx developed a theory of alienation called Entfremdung, so I knew I would mess that up, or estrangement. His theory describes the separation of things that naturally belong together and the place of antagonism between things that are properly in harmony. His theory describes the social alienation of people from aspects of their human nature as a consequence of living in a society stratified into social classes. He said that being a mechanistic part of a social class alienates a person from his or her humanity. He viewed alienation as the way we feel like we are different, separate, or even enemies with people who are actually very much like us. Alien means someone who is foreign, someone who is a stranger, someone who is not part of the community. And of course, alien is also the word for a being from another planet. When we experience alienation, we think like people who aren't even from this planet, as if we are totally separate from these Earth people, not affected by them, having no effect on them. When we forget our interconnectedness, we separate ourselves from our community. We feel alienated. It is a sad, and divisive, and destructive feeling. One opposite of alienation is connection. Another opposite is Unitarian Universalism. Knowing that we are all a unit, that we are unified in our unity, is part of being Unitarians. Knowing that we are universally, meaning everyone, connected and intertwined, is part of being a Universalist. The web of life is one, and it connects everything. It is unified, and it is universal. So how about that? We've got the cure for alienation right here. There are no aliens here, right? Just us human beings. As long as we apply the cure. If the opposite of alienation is connectedness, what would be the cure for alienation? What could connect us all? Maybe love? During immigration actions with the Standing on the Side of the Love programs, a sign here for it, which is a Unitarian Universalist Association campaign with which the Service Committee sometimes collaborates. The t-shirts that you use wear are often, or have earned us the nickname, the Love People. How cool is that? But what does love look like? When you say, this is the country where I was born, so I am connected to the people who moved here last year, you're being a love person. When you say, I eat in restaurants, so I am connected to the people who work in them, you are being a love person. When you say, I am a worker, so I am connected to the workers in Arkansas who are struggling for fair treatment, you are being a love person. When you say, I breathe the air of this planet, so I am connected to the people growing their crops in Haiti sustainably to support the health of the earth, you are being a love person. Love is the antidote for alienation. Love is the cure. The kind of love we're talking about is the kind Jesus meant when he said, love your neighbor as yourself. It's not about being in love with your neighbor, or being fond of your neighbor, or liking your neighbor, or even feeling respect for your neighbor. It's not about feeling at all. It's about knowing that we are not separate. The fact of our being neighbors, of our sharing this town, or this country, or this little planet, of our being parts of the same interdependent web, makes us one. Love is knowing that and acting upon that knowledge. Love is also about honoring each person's fundamental rights as a human and doing what we can to ensure that every person has access to those rights and can harness their power to live thriving, fulfilled lives. This kind of love transcends borders and leaps over boundaries. The work of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee isn't charity. It isn't really crisis relief, although the UUSC does provide aid to people in crisis, like those impacted by Hurricane Katrina 2 years ago, or by the earthquake in Haiti a couple of years ago, or by Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines right now. The fundamental task of the UUSC is to show us that we are all connected, that the barriers we erect between us are fictions, and that we must all work together toward mutual liberation of ourselves from these fictions. When we realize this, we can't help acting on acting in love. When we act in love, others will be empowered to act in love. Then we will all be connected in a web of love. Through the Guest at Your Table program, UUSC helps us realize that we are part of an interdependent web of existence. And Unitarian Universalism is about the exact same thing. Do you know why our seventh principle counsels us to, quote, respect the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part? Because that's what being alive is all about. Deeply knowing that we are a part of an intricate, interwoven web of life. Knowing that we have a place amidst all these others who are not other, but part of the same human race. Knowing that their faces represent another complete human being with the same needs and desires as our own. Feeling the tug when another person laughs, or worries, or sings, or suffers. And knowing that they feel the tugs we make on the web as well. That is love. That is when we have connected with the web of love and leave alienation behind. When we can't take a single step or a single breath without being aware of how others are walking with us, breathing with us, then we leave alienation behind. When we reach a place of solidarity and stop being aliens to each other here on this earth, and in that moment, we know we are fully alive. So may it be for you, for each of us.